my PowerPoint is about feelings for climate, and then I'm also incorporating this whole idea of SDG 4.7, uh, which talks about uh, sustainable development goals, with basically sustainability education and global citizenship education, including culture of peace, non-violence, and all the I guess meaningful things that we need to do in education. This came about with the focus on 4.7 came about with ex-Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, Professor Jeffrey Sachs from Columbia University, and additional Secretary General UNESCO, Stefania Giannani, coming together to form Mission 4.7, which specifically focuses on education for sustainable development and global citizenship education. And we wanted to have this as like the mission going forward in curriculum development, in policy advising, and others. And I'm the chair of this mission. Uh, Also, the background work for the mission came about with the Happiness Council work that Professor Sachs has been leading for many years on creating this global happiness index and for countries, and I work on the education policy side. So bringing in the aspect of happiness, how do we define it? Many psychologists have been working on this framework, and how do we bring in that psychology oriented framework into education? And so this whole idea of education for sustainable development, happiness, well-being, there are different strands of research that I just wanted to put it out there that that talk about this together, and it's not separate. Basically, O'Brien has stated that sustainable happiness should be the aim of education. They have coined the word sustainable happiness. They have put in emotional development as a part of the discussion to promote cooperative and compassionate society. Education for sustainable development must address emotions. So many researchers have pointed this out, that it should not be separate. It should not be seen as a separate, areas. And so the two research questions that I had in mind are: what role does emotions play in sustainability education? So connecting emotions and sustainability education, and what is the treatment of this social emotional learning into the formal curriculum right now? And there are two concepts that I just wanted to bring in as like a theoretical, they just guided me in this whole direction. First is this idea of positive education, which is coming from the Global Happiness Council reports, which have used SEL as a big constructive way of transforming education and seeing how we can recover from COVID. And so SEL became really, really important, as we all know, during COVID recovery strategy. And that's where positive education says that we need to be focusing much more on the mental well-being. And then we also have pluralistic education, which is basically a tool on how do we make meaning out of education in classroom context, how do we bring in the social emotional learning, and helps link not just personal norms, values, and habits, but also community related aspects, like particularly environment that builds in community related decision making, democracy, deliberative communication models, and other things. So how can we build in these approaches, pluralistic approaches, to build education and to build education for sustainable development, as well as interweave this positive action or positive education with the social emotional aspect. So here is a theoretical framework that I had created on positive education and how it is linked to happiness and well-being, and how this whole happiness and well-being is associated to pluralistic approaches, which is about classroom dynamics, and then education for sustainable development. And this has really, these are big areas that some people are connecting, but there's a lot of gap in the literature, and practice is definitely missing. So I just wanted to, this is my state. I live in New Jersey, and I wanted to take New Jersey as an example to see what is happening with these three big ideas, happiness frameworks, as well as pluralistic education and education for sustainable development, and see what can we do. Because New Jersey is right now a very interesting case. Because of the First Lady of New Jersey, Ms. Tammy Murphy, they have decided to have climate education integrated into all subjects from K to 12. And this has not happened in any other state before. Many other states are trying to replicate it, but New Jersey is the pioneers of having climate education being integrated into all these different standards: social science, science standards, math standard, arts, language. So it's all interwoven. It's not treated as a separate subject or a side subject. And the learning standards of New Jersey basically shows how the goal is to leverage the passion students have shown for this critical issue and providing them opportunities to develop a deep understanding of science behind the changes and to explore solutions our world desperately needs. So basically getting feeling connected with environment, and then how do we bring in the solutions, the positive part. So I'm taking couple of data here. I don't want to take a lot of time doing this because I want to get on to the results very quickly. I've taken the New Jersey lesson plans that they have on the education hub. They have an education hub, and then I've also taken some data from the UNESCO 2017 report on what are the objectives of the learning goals, and then New Jersey's learning standards as well. You did some coding, and the results basically are taking the example of New Jersey's climate education core ideas to see how many social emotional aspects we are covering, because we are covering behavioral, cognitive. These are all the emergent themes that came up in the data, and social emotional also came in. And it seems like we are covering 15% here, 12% here. High school high school is around 15%. Highest is definitely cognitive, more factual information, human impact, that brings in all the anxiety of why we are doing all this to the environment. And then we also cover some bit of interdependence between nature and people. And then we do social emotional is still pretty weak. When we do the coding of the New Jersey Climate Education Hub, there is a hub that they've created. Social emotional comes in around 2.76% only, whereas many other science is definitely dominating with 12%, social science with 13%, but social emotional is still very low. So but the UNESCO 2017 report basically suggests that social emotional learning are really important, and they have all these different social emotional learning attributes that they have listed under the SDGs and what students should be learning. And New Jersey still lacks all these things that I mentioned here as a part of what the UNESCO report suggests needs to be included. It misses out on big things: intrinsic value of education, motivation, identity, biases, interaction, responsibility, feelings, empower others, empathy, show sensitivity. These are all the things that are missing in the New Jersey's data. And so my concluding remarks here are that um it's very obvious that we have not really done a good job of promoting or encouraging that feeling that kids have. Younger kids definitely look at the leaf and like stay there and admire it and hug trees, whereas when they start growing up, I think we have de-educated them and have taken them away from nature, and we've taken them more towards the factual science aspects of environment, and not really the emotional side of environment and why we need to be protecting it. And the emotional side then gets demonstrated as the eco anxiety part, because then they really know the harmful effects that humans have on environment, and then there is all this eco anxiety builds up. So we have not really nurtured that connection with nature that kids, early grade children, you must have seen, have. And then we have not really taken that in a positive way, in a positive education side, and use that social emotional with the heuristic tools that we have, that we could pluralistic approaches show us on how we can actually use these aspects as a part of discussions, listening about. That's all global citizenship, right? Like discussing in the with the community, discussing with all these different students, listening to what their issues are, and coming up with a democratic solution. So those aspects are definitely missing, and we are still going back to doing science in a very factual way, and not really bringing in the whole child perspective in classroom interaction. So I think those are my few critical remarks here. I just wanted to also come, my paper still in the works. I want to develop this rubric which includes sustainable happiness and well-being indicators, as well as some positive education indicators and pluralistic education indicators as well, to bring in the psychological, to bring in the social emotional connection, and to see how classroom dynamics can change, to bring to foster these three aspects coming together. So that's still in the works, and hopefully we will, maybe through your discussion today and maybe later on, we can have a much more detailed discussions on what this rubric could be and how it could be utilized in a different education setting. So thank you, and I hope I was on time, and I'll finish my presentation here.